Baby Saw 3. German Shepherds, Shivering in Heavy Rain. What happened next? Left everyone in tears. What you're about to hear will change the way you see kindness forever. Before we begin this incredible story, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs hope today, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from right now. The rain started as a whisper that Tuesday afternoon, but within minutes it became a roar that drowned out everything else in the small town of Riverside. 5-year-old Ethan Miller pressed his nose against the cold glass of his mother's car window, watching the drops race each other down to the bottom. His mother, Grace, was frantically loading grocery bags into the trunk, her hair already soaked despite the umbrella she tried to balance while juggling the bags. "Almost done, sweetie," Grace called out, though her voice was nearly lost in the sound of rain hammering against the car roof. Ethan wasn't really listening anyway. His attention had been caught by something else entirely. There, under the broken bus shelter across the parking lot, 3 shapes huddled together against the storm. At first, Ethan thought they were just shadows or maybe bags someone had left behind. But then one of them moved and Ethan's heart jumped. They were dogs. 3 German shepherds pressed so close together they looked like one big mass of wet fur. The rain was coming at them sideways now, the broken shelter offering almost no protection at all. "Mama," Ethan said, but Grace was still fighting with the grocery bags, trying to stop the paper bags from dissolving in the rain. The dogs shifted again, and Ethan could see them more clearly now. The biggest one, a male with a scarred face, had positioned himself on the outside, taking the worst of the rain to protect the other 2. Behind him, a smaller female was lying down, and Ethan could see something was wrong with her paw. It looked swollen and dark. The 3rd dog, younger than the others, was pressed against the female, trying to share what little warmth they had. Other shoppers hurried past the dogs, some pulling their children away when they got too close. Ethan heard one woman say loudly to her husband, "Those strays have been here for days. Someone should call animal control before they bite someone." Her husband nodded, adding, "Probably diseased. Look how thin they are. Disgusting that the store allows this." The words made Ethan's stomach hurt in a way he didn't quite understand. The dogs didn't look mean to him. They looked scared. The big one's eyes followed each person who passed, not with aggression, but with something Ethan recognized from when his friend Tommy's dad left and didn't come back. It was the look of waiting for someone who might never come. Grace finally got the last bag in the car and hurried around to the driver's side. "Sorry about that, baby." This rain came out of nowhere. She started to open her door when Ethan suddenly unbuckled his seatbelt and pushed open his own door. "Ethan! What are you doing?" Grace shouted, but Ethan was already running across the parking lot, his little Spider-Man umbrella clutched in his hand. The rain soaked through his clothes instantly, but he didn't care. Something inside him, something he couldn't name, but felt as strong as anything he'd ever felt, pulled him toward those dogs. "Ethan Miller, you get back here right now." Grace's voice was sharp with fear, but Ethan kept running. As he got closer, the big dog stood up, placing himself more firmly between Ethan and the other 2. But he didn't growl. He didn't bare his teeth. He just watched, water streaming down his face, his brown eyes never leaving Ethan's face. Ethan stopped about 5 feet away, suddenly aware that these were very big dogs and he was a very small boy. But then he looked at the female dog, saw how she was shivering, saw the younger dog trying to lick her injured paw, and his fear melted away. "Hi," Ethan said softly, holding his umbrella out toward them. "Are you cold?" The big dog's ears twitched at Ethan's voice, not in an aggressive way, but like he was surprised to hear kindness. Ethan took a small step forward, and the dog took a small step back, still protecting the others, but clearly not wanting to frighten the child. Grace had caught up by now, grabbing Ethan's shoulder. "Ethan, we don't approach strange dogs. They could be dangerous." But even as she said it, she was looking at the dogs, really looking at them, and something in her expression changed. They were painfully thin. She could count every rib on the younger dog. The female's paw wasn't just swollen, it had a deep gash that was clearly infected, and the big male, despite his protective stance, was shaking from cold and exhaustion. "They're not dangerous, Mama," Ethan said, with the certainty only a 5-year-old could have. "They're just sad." Before Grace could respond, the store manager, Mr. Garrison, came storming out. He was a large man with a permanent frown, and the rain seemed to make him even angrier than usual. "Ma'am, please keep your child away from those animals. They've been lurking here for 3 days now, scaring off customers." 3 days? Grace asked, horrified. "In this weather?" Mr. Garrison shrugged. "Not my problem. I've called animal control twice. They'll come eventually and take care of it." The way he said "take care of it" made Ethan's stomach hurt even more. "But they're hungry," Ethan said, looking up at Mr. Garrison with wide eyes. "And the girl dog is hurt." "That's not our concern," Mr. Garrison said coldly. "These strays are a nuisance. They probably have rabies or worse. I've had 3 customers complain already today." As if understanding they were being discussed, the younger dog let out a small whimper, not a threatening sound, but a plea. The big dog immediately turned and nuzzled him, trying to offer comfort despite having none to give. Ethan couldn't stand it anymore. He pulled his lunchbox from his mother's shopping bag, the one with his leftover sandwich from lunch. Grace always packed too much, worried he wouldn't eat enough at kindergarten. Today, for the first time, Ethan was grateful for the extra food. "Ethan, no!" Grace started, but Ethan was already kneeling down, rain soaking through his pants. He opened the lunchbox and pulled out the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, breaking it into 3 pieces. "Here," he said softly, holding out a piece toward the big dog. "It's good. My mama makes the best sandwiches." The big dog looked at the sandwich, then at Ethan, then back at the sandwich. Slowly, so slowly that Ethan barely saw him move at first, the dog stretched his neck forward. His movements were careful, deliberate, making sure the child could see he meant no harm. When he finally took the sandwich, his teeth never even touched Ethan's fingers. He was gentle as a whisper. "See?" Ethan said, turning to his mother with a bright smile. "He's nice." The big dog took the sandwich piece back to the others, dropping it in front of the injured female. She looked up at him, and Ethan could swear he saw her eyes fill with gratitude before she carefully ate the small offering. The big dog returned, waiting patiently as Ethan offered him another piece. This time, the dog ate it himself, his tail giving the tiniest wag. "Don't encourage them," Mr. Garrison snapped. "You're just making the problem worse." "The only problem I see," a gravelly voice said from behind them, "is a man with no heart yelling at a child for showing compassion." They all turned to see an elderly man approaching, walking with a slight limp, but standing tall despite his age. He wore an old army jacket, and his eyes were sharp despite the wrinkles around them. This was Samuel Torres, though everyone called him Sam. He'd lived in Riverside for only a year, keeping mostly to himself, but Ethan had seen him at the library sometimes, always reading books about history. "This doesn't concern you, old man," Mr. Garrison said, but there was something in Sam's eyes that made him take a step back. "Everything concerning kindness concerns me," Sam replied. He looked at the dogs, and his expression softened. "I've been leaving water for them when I can, but your security guard threatened to have me arrested for trespassing if I came back." "You've been helping them?" Ethan asked, his face lighting up. Sam nodded, kneeling down beside Ethan despite the obvious pain it caused his old knees. "That big fellow there, he never eats first. Always makes sure the others get food before he takes any. And the female, she got that injury defending the younger one from some teenagers who were throwing rocks yesterday." Grace gasped. "People were throwing rocks at them?" "Saw it myself," Sam confirmed. She jumped in front of the young one, took a rock right to the paw. "Been limping ever since." Ethan felt tears mixing with the rain on his face. He looked at the dogs with new understanding. The big one was the protector, the female was hurt from being brave, and the younger one was just scared. They were a family, just like him and his mama. "What should we call them?" Ethan asked suddenly. "We're not naming them," Grace said automatically, but her voice lacked conviction. She was looking at the injured paw, and Ethan could see her nurse training kicking in. Before becoming a full-time mom, Grace had worked at the local hospital, and the sight of untreated wounds still affected her deeply. "The big one looks like a bear," Ethan said, ignoring his mother's protest. "So he's Bear. And the hurt girl should be Luna, because she has a white spot on her head, like the moon. And the young one is Scout because he keeps looking around like he's watching for danger." Sam chuckled. "Good names, son." They suit them. Bear seemed to understand he'd been given a name. His tail wagged more obviously this time, and he took a careful step toward Ethan. The boy held out his hand, palm up. The way his teacher had shown him was safe. Bear sniffed his hand, then gave it the gentlest lick. "He kissed me?" Ethan giggled, the pure joy in his voice making even Mr. Garrison's expression softened for a moment. But the moment was broken by the sound of more voices. A group of people had gathered, some taking pictures with their phones, others muttering disapprovingly. Ethan heard someone say, "Those dogs should be put down. Look how mangy they are." "They're not mangy," Ethan said loudly, surprising everyone with his fierce tone. "They're just wet and hungry and scared." A woman Ethan recognized as Mrs. Hoffman from down the street shook her head. "Sweetie, you don't understand. Dogs like this are dangerous. They could have diseases. They could hurt someone. The only hurt I see," Sam said, standing up with effort, "is what people have done to them. Look at them properly. These aren't just any dogs." He moved closer to Bear, who watched him warily but didn't retreat. Sam made a hand gesture, a specific movement that meant nothing to the watching crowd. But Bear's reaction was immediate. He sat down, back straight, attention focused entirely on Sam. "I'll be damned," Sam whispered. He made another gesture, and Bear lay down, then another, and Bear stood back up. "These are military dogs." "Trained military dogs." The crowd murmured in surprise, but Mr. Garrison scoffed. "That's impossible. Military dogs don't just end up on the streets." Sam was already examining Bear more closely, careful not to startle him. "Look here," he said, gently moving Bear's ear. There, faded but still visible, was a tattoo, a series of numbers and letters that meant nothing to most people but everything to Sam. "This is a military ID," Sam said, his voice thick with emotion. "These dogs served our country, and this is how we repay them." Grace had pulled out her phone, typing the ID number into a search engine. What she found made her gasp. "Oh my God, they belong to Sergeant Marcus Webb, 82nd Airborne. He went missing in action 8 months ago in Afghanistan." The crowd fell silent. Even Mr. Garrison looked uncomfortable now. These weren't just strays. They were heroes, abandoned and forgotten. "What happened to them?" Ethan asked, his young mind trying to understand how soldier dogs ended up alone and hurt. Grace kept reading, her expression growing darker. "According to this, after Sergeant Webb was declared MIA, his dogs were supposed to be rehomed through a company called Davidson Security. They specialize in placing military dogs, but..." She paused, reading further. "Davidson Security reported the dogs ran away during transport. That was 6 months ago." 6 months? Sam's voice was sharp with anger. "These dogs have been on their own for 6 months?" Luna whimpered again, trying to stand but failing due to her injured paw. Scout immediately pressed against her, offering his warmth. Bear watched them, then looked back at the humans, and Ethan could swear he saw a plea in those brown eyes. "We have to help them," Ethan said, tugging on his mother's hand. "Mama, please." Their soldier is lost, and they're all alone. Grace was torn. She could see the pain in the dog's eyes, see how desperately they needed help. But she was also a single mother with a 5-year-old to protect. Taking in 3 large, potentially traumatized dogs was a huge responsibility. "Maybe we could just get them some food?" she suggested weakly. "And call a rescue organization?" "I've called every rescue in a 50-mile radius," Sam said. "They're all full, and none of them want to take 3 German shepherds with unknown behavioral issues, and animal control." He didn't finish the sentence, but everyone knew what happened to dogs that animal control couldn't place. Ethan had been quiet, thinking hard with his 5-year-old brain. Then his face lit up. "Mama, what if their soldier comes back? What if he comes home and his dogs are gone forever? He'll be so sad." That hit Grace like a physical blow. She thought about Marcus Webb, somewhere out there, possibly alive, possibly hoping to come home to the only family he had left. These dogs. "We can't just take them," she said, but her resolve was weakening. "We don't have supplies, we don't know their medical history, we don't even know if they're safe around children." "Look at them with Ethan," Sam said quietly. "Do they look dangerous to you?" Grace looked. Bear had moved closer to Ethan, not threatening, but protective, placing himself between the boy and the growing crowd. Luna, despite her injury, had her eyes fixed on Ethan with what could only be described as hope, and Scout, young and scared as he was, had his tail wagging slightly every time Ethan spoke. "Mama," Ethan said, using his most serious voice, "sometimes doing the right thing is hard. You told me that, but we still have to do it." Grace stared at her son, amazed at the wisdom coming from such a small person. But before she could respond, a new voice cut through the crowd. "What's all this commotion?" Vincent Holt pushed through the gathered people, and Grace's heart sank. Vincent owned several businesses in town and had a reputation for getting what he wanted, regardless of who got hurt. He was also on the town council and had been pushing for stricter ordinances about stray animals. Vincent took one look at the dogs and smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. "So, these are the strays everyone's been complaining about. Don't worry, folks, I'll handle this. I have connections at Animal Control. These dogs will be gone by tomorrow." "No!" Ethan shouted, throwing his arms around Bear's neck. The big dog stood perfectly still, allowing the child to cling to him. "You can't take them?" Vincent's expression hardened. "Little boy, those are dangerous animals. They need to be removed for public safety." "They're military dogs," Sam said, stepping forward. "They deserve respect, not extermination." Vincent laughed, an ugly sound. "Military dogs? Please, even if that's true, it doesn't matter. They're strays now, and strays get dealt with according to the law." "What law says we can't help them?" Grace asked, finding her courage. "The law that says harboring dangerous animals is a crime," Vincent replied smoothly. "And I'll personally make sure anyone who tries to help these mutts faces the full legal consequences." The threat hung in the air like the rain that continued to pour down. Most of the crowd began to disperse, not wanting to get involved with Vincent Holt. But Ethan didn't move. He stayed there, kneeling in the puddles, his arms around Bear while tears streamed down his face. "Please," Ethan whispered, though whether he was talking to Vincent, his mother, or God, no one knew. "Please don't let them take my friends." Bear turned his head and, very gently, licked the tears from Ethan's face. Luna managed to stand on 3 legs and hobbled over, pressing against Ethan's other side. Scout joined them, and suddenly Ethan was surrounded by wet, shivering dogs who seemed to understand that this little boy was their only hope. Sam pulled out his phone and started recording. "Let the record show," he said loudly, "that Vincent Holt is threatening a child and injured animals who have served our country. This is what passes for leadership in Riverside." Vincent's face turned red. "Turn that off, old man, or I'll have you arrested for harassment." "Try it," Sam said, continuing to record. "I've faced worse than you in 3 different wars. You don't scare me." Grace made a decision. It went against every practical instinct she had. But looking at her son surrounded by those dogs, she knew there was only one choice. "Ethan, help me get them to the car," she said. Ethan's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really, Mama? Really? But Mr. Holt is right about one thing. We need to be careful and legal about this. We're taking them to the vet first. Then we'll figure out the rest." Vincent stepped forward. "You can't do this. I'll call the police." "Please do," Grace said, her mama bear instincts fully activated. "I'm sure they'd love to hear how you threatened a 5-year-old and tried to prevent us from getting medical care for injured animals." She turned to Sam. "Would you help us?" "I don't think Luna can walk far." Sam nodded, already moving toward Luna. "I've got some blankets in my truck. Let me get them." As Sam went for the blankets, Ethan stood up, still keeping one hand on Bear. "Come on, Bear. We're going somewhere safe. You and Luna and Scout." Bear looked at Ethan, then at Grace, then back at Ethan. He seemed to be making a decision. Then slowly he stood and took a step toward the car. Luna tried to follow, but stumbled. Without hesitation, Bear went back to her, and in a move that made everyone watching gasp, he positioned himself so she could lean on him. Scout took her other side, and together the 3 dogs began moving towards safety. "That's incredible," someone in the remaining crowd whispered. "They're helping each other." Vincent watched with narrowed eyes. "This isn't over," he said quietly to Grace. "These dogs are a liability, and when something goes wrong, and it will, I'll make sure everyone knows who's responsible." Grace met his gaze steadily. "The only thing I'm responsible for is teaching my son that kindness matters more than convenience." Sam returned with the blankets, and together they managed to get all 3 dogs into Grace's minivan. Luna was laid carefully on blankets in the back, with Scout curled beside her. Bear sat in the middle row, his head turning constantly to check on both his packmates and Ethan, who had insisted on sitting next to him. As Grace started the car, she caught sight of Mr. Garrison in her rearview mirror. He was on his phone, and she had a sinking feeling he was calling Vincent or Animal Control or both. They needed to move fast. "Sam, are you following us?" she asked. "Right behind you," Sam confirmed. "I know a vet who will help, no questions asked. Dr. Martinez, she's good people." As they drove away from the shopping center, Ethan kept his hand on Bear's head, feeling the dog slowly relax under his touch. "Don't worry," he whispered. "You're safe now. We won't let anyone hurt you anymore." Bear turned and looked at Ethan with those deep brown eyes, and Ethan could swear he saw understanding there. Luna whimpered from the back, and immediately both Bear and Scout turned to check on her. "They really love each other, don't they, Mama?" Ethan said. Grace nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "Yes, baby. They're a family." "Like us?" "Like us." The rain was starting to let up as they drove toward the vet clinic, but Grace knew the storm was far from over. Vincent Holt didn't make idle threats, and taking in 3 military dogs with unknown histories was a huge risk. But looking at her son's face in the mirror, seeing the pure joy and determination there, she knew she'd made the right choice. What she didn't know was that their decision to help 3 abandoned dogs would uncover a conspiracy that went deeper than anyone imagined. Vincent Holt's interest in the dogs wasn't just about public safety. He had secrets, dark ones, and these dogs were connected to those secrets in ways that would soon put everyone in danger. But for now, in this moment, a little boy and 3 dogs had found each other in a storm, and that was enough. That was everything. Dr. Martinez's clinic was in an old building on the quiet side of town, the kind of place that had been there so long most people forgot it existed. The paint was peeling and the sign was faded, but Sam assured them that Dr. Martinez was the best vet in 3 counties. As they pulled up, the front door opened and a woman in her 40s came out, already wearing her white coat. She had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and moved with the quick efficiency of someone used to emergencies. "Sam called ahead," she said, coming straight to the van. "Let's see what we're dealing with." The moment she saw Luna's paw, her expression grew serious. "This infection is advanced. We need to get her inside immediately." She looked at Bear and Scout. "They all need examination, but she's priority 1. "Will she be okay?" Ethan asked, his voice small and worried. Dr. Martinez smiled at him gently. "I'm going to do everything I can, sweetheart. But she's lucky to have found you when she did. Another day or 2 and—" She didn't finish, but the adults understood. Getting Luna inside was a delicate operation. Bear refused to leave her side, growling softly when Dr. Martinez first tried to separate them. It wasn't an aggressive growl, more like a worried rumble, but it was clear he wasn't going to abandon his packmate. "It's okay, Bear," Ethan said, putting his small hand on the dog's head. "The doctor is going to help Luna feel better. You can stay with her." Bear looked at Ethan, then at Luna, clearly torn between protecting her and trusting these new humans. Finally, he stepped back just enough to let Dr. Martinez work, but his eyes never left Luna. The examination room was small, clearly designed for 1 animal at a time, but Dr. Martinez didn't complain about having all 3 dogs plus 3 humans crowded inside. She worked quickly, examining Luna's paw with gentle expertise. "The cut is deep and badly infected," she said. "She needs antibiotics immediately, and the wound needs to be cleaned and dressed. She's also severely malnourished and dehydrated." She looked at Bear and Scout. "They all are." As she worked, she noticed something else. "These scars," she said, running her hand along Bear's side, where old wounds had healed poorly. "These aren't from street fights. These are deliberate. Someone hurt these dogs." Sam's expression darkened. "You mean abuse?" "I mean torture, Doctor," Martinez said bluntly. "These marks on Bear's legs, those are from chains, worn too tight for too long, and Scout has cigarette burns on his belly." Ethan didn't fully understand what the adults were talking about, but he understood enough to know that someone had been mean to his new friends. He wrapped his arms around Scout, who was trembling. "Who would do this to military dogs?" Grace asked, horrified. "Someone who wanted to break them," Dr. Martinez said. "But look at them. They're still gentle, still loyal to each other. Whoever tried to break them failed. She turned her attention back to Luna's paw, cleaning it carefully while the dog whimpered softly. Bear immediately moved closer, licking Luna's face in comfort. The bond between them was so obvious, so pure, that even Dr. Martinez had to pause and wipe her eyes. "How long have they been on the streets?" she asked. "We think 6 months," Grace said. "They belong to a Sergeant Webb who went MIA. They were supposed to be rehomed but reportedly ran away." Dr. Martinez snorted. "Military dogs don't run away. They're trained to return, to stay, to wait. If these dogs have been on the streets for 6 months, it's because someone dumped them." As she worked, she kept finding more evidence of abuse. Healed fractures that hadn't been set properly, patches where fur would never grow back because of chemical burns. And something else, something that made her frown. "This is strange," she said, examining a small scar behind Bear's ear. "This looks like a surgical incision. Recent, maybe 7 months old." "What kind of surgery?" Sam asked. "I'm not sure. Let me check something." She got a small device that looked like a scanner and ran it over Bear's neck and shoulders. It beeped suddenly near his shoulder blade. "There's something here," she said. "Something metal under the skin." "A chip?" Grace asked. "Like for identification?" "No, this is different. It's bigger than a normal chip and in the wrong place." Dr. Martinez looked troubled. "I'd need to do an X-ray to see what it is, but I don't like this. Someone put something in this dog, and I doubt it was for his benefit." Before anyone could respond, the clinic door burst open. Vincent Holt stood there with 2 other men, all of them looking angry. "Those dogs are stolen property," Vincent announced. "I have documentation that they belong to Davidson Security, and you're harboring stolen goods." "How did you even know we were here?" Grace demanded. Vincent smiled coldly. "I have friends everywhere, Ms. Miller. Now hand over the dogs, or I'll have you all arrested." "You can't do that," Sam said, stepping forward. "These dogs need medical care." "What they need is to be returned to their rightful owners," Vincent said. He pulled out some official-looking papers. "See? Legal documentation that Davidson Security owns these animals." Dr. Martinez looked at the papers, then at Vincent. "These papers are dated 3 days ago. How could Davidson Security claim ownership of dogs that supposedly ran away 6 months ago?" Vincent's smile faltered for just a moment. "That's not your concern. The papers are legal. Hand over the dogs." "No," Ethan said, stepping in front of Bear. "You can't have them. They're hurt and scared and you're mean." One of Vincent's men laughed. "Kid's got more spine than sense." Vincent's expression hardened. "Remove the child. Get the dogs." The man stepped forward, reaching for Ethan. And that's when Bear showed why military dogs were so valued. He moved faster than anyone expected, placing himself between Ethan and the approaching man. His lips pulled back, showing teeth that suddenly looked very dangerous, and a growl rumbled from deep in his chest. This wasn't the worried rumble from before. This was a clear warning. "Back off," the man said. But there was fear in his voice now. Scout, young as he was, joined Bear, and even Luna struggled to her feet, standing on 3 legs but ready to defend the child who had shown them kindness. "Call them off," Vincent demanded, but there was something in his eyes now, not just anger, but worry. "I can't call them off," Grace said. "They're not my dogs, remember? According to you, they belong to Davidson Security. Then you," Vincent pointed at Ethan, "tell them to stand down." Ethan looked up at Vincent with eyes that held no fear. "No, you want to hurt them? And friends don't let friends get hurt." The standoff might have continued, but suddenly there were sirens outside. Multiple sirens getting closer. Vincent's face went pale. "You called the cops?" he snarled at Grace. "I called them, Doctor," Martinez said calmly. "The moment you walked in, making threats. And I also called someone else." The door opened again, and this time a woman in a police uniform walked in. But this wasn't just any officer. This was Captain Diana Chen, head of the local police department's Special Units Division. "Gentlemen," she said, looking at Vincent and his men, "I heard there was a disturbance." "These people have stolen property," Vincent said quickly. These dogs belong to the United States military," Captain Chen interrupted. "I've been investigating Davidson Security for 6 months. They've been stealing and selling military dogs. And you, Mr. Holt, are going to tell me everything you know about it." Vincent's face went from pale to white. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just trying to help return lost property." "Really?" Captain Chen pulled out her phone and showed a photo. It was Vincent with another man, exchanging money. "This is you 3 months ago, meeting with Davidson's representative. We have you on tape discussing the purchase of trained attack dogs for your security business." "That's not illegal," Vincent said, but he was sweating now. "No, but stealing military dogs is, and so is falsifying ownership documents." She looked at the papers Vincent had shown. "These are forgeries, and not very good ones." Vincent's men were backing toward the door, but more police officers had arrived, blocking their exit. "Here's what's going to happen," Captain Chen said. "You're all coming with me for questioning, and these dogs are going into protective custody until we sort this out." "No!" Ethan cried out. "You can't take them. They just got safe." Captain Chen knelt down to Ethan's level. "I'm not going to hurt them, sweetheart. But they're evidence in a crime now. They have to be officially processed." "But Luna needs medicine," Ethan said, tears starting to fall. "And they're scared. They won't understand." Captain Chen looked at the dogs, saw how they were positioned protectively around Ethan, saw Luna swaying on 3 legs but still trying to stand guard. "Dr. Martinez," she said, "how long until the injured one is stable enough to move? She needs at least 48 hours of treatment. Moving her now could be dangerous." Captain Chen thought for a moment. "Okay. The dogs stay here for medical treatment. I'll post an officer to guard them. Mr. Holt and his friends come with me now." As Vincent was led away in handcuffs, he turned back to look at Grace. "You have no idea what you've gotten involved in. These dogs are worth more than you can imagine, and the people who want them won't stop." "Is that a threat?" Captain Chen asked. "It's a warning," Vincent said. "I'm not the only one interested in these animals, and the others won't be as polite as me." After the police left with Vincent and his men, the clinic felt quiet, too quiet. Luna had been given pain medication and antibiotics and was sleeping on a soft bed. Dr. Martinez had set up. Scout was curled up beside her, and Bear was standing guard, his eyes moving between Luna and Ethan. "We should go home," Grace said softly. "Let them rest." "Can't we stay?" Ethan asked. "They'll be scared if they wake up and we're gone." Dr. Martinez smiled. "Actually, I could use some help tonight. I need to monitor Luna's temperature every few hours, and having familiar faces here would keep them calm." Grace looked at her son's hopeful face and sighed. "I'll need to go home and get some things. Pajamas, blankets, food." "I'll stay with the boy and the dogs," Sam offered. "Make sure they're safe." Grace hesitated, but Sam's steady presence had been reassuring all day. "Okay, I'll be back in an hour." After Grace left, Ethan sat on the floor next to Luna's bed, gently stroking her head. Bear had finally relaxed enough to lie down, though his eyes remained watchful. Scout was sleeping, making small whimpering sounds that suggested his dreams weren't pleasant. "Mr. Sam," Ethan said quietly, "why would someone hurt dogs that helped soldiers?" Sam was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes, son, people see value in things differently. These dogs are trained to do amazing things. Find bad guys, detect danger, protect people. In the wrong hands, that training could be used for bad purposes." "Like what?" "Like protecting bad people while they do bad things, or finding things that should stay hidden." Sam looked at Bear. "Military dogs are worth a lot of money to criminals." Ethan thought about this. But Bear and Luna and Scout wouldn't help bad people. They're good dogs. "That's probably why they were hurt," Sam said gently. "Someone tried to make them mean, to break their training and turn them into something they're not. But they didn't break," Ethan said firmly. "They're still good." "No," Sam agreed. "They didn't break. They stayed loyal to each other and to what they were trained to be. That takes a special kind of courage." Dr. Martinez came back in, checking Luna's vitals. "Her fever is down a bit." "That's good. The antibiotics are working." "Will she be able to walk normal again?" Ethan asked. "With proper treatment and time, she should recover most function, but she'll probably always have a slight limp." "That's okay," Ethan said. "It makes her special, like a battle scar." Dr. Martinez smiled. "That's a good way to look at it." Bear suddenly stood up, his ears perked and alert. A low growl rumbled in his throat. Scout woke up immediately, also alert. Even Luna, despite her medication, opened her eyes. "What is it, boy?" Sam asked, standing up slowly. Through the window, they could see a car driving slowly past the clinic. It was a black SUV with tinted windows, and it was moving too slowly to be like casual traffic. "Get away from the windows," Sam said urgently. "Doc, do you have a back exit?" "Yes, but what's—" The front window shattered as something was thrown through it. Smoke began filling the room immediately. "Tear gas!" Sam shouted. "Everyone out the back!" But moving Luna was going to be difficult. Bear and Scout were already coughing from the gas, their eyes watering. Ethan was crying, both from the gas and from fear. Sam, drawing on old military training, grabbed a fire extinguisher and sprayed it at the gas canister, trying to contain the smoke. "Doc, get the kid out. I'll get the dogs." But Ethan wouldn't leave. "Not without them," he cried, wrapping his arms around Bear. Dr. Martinez grabbed blankets, soaking them quickly in water and throwing them over the dogs' heads to help them breathe. We moved together or not at all. Working together, they managed to get to the back door. Sam carried Luna, Doctor. Martinez guided Scout, and Ethan held tight to Bear's collar. They stumbled out into the alley behind the clinic, gasping for clean air. The black SUV came roaring around the corner, tires screeching. It stopped just feet from them, and 3 men in masks jumped out. "Get the dogs," one of them ordered. Bear placed himself in front of Ethan again, but he was still affected by the gas, swaying slightly. Scout tried to help, but he was coughing too hard to be effective. Luna couldn't even stand. "Leave them alone!" Ethan screamed, but one of the men grabbed him, lifting him easily. That's when Bear found strength nobody knew he had left. Despite the gas, despite 6 months of starvation and abuse, he launched himself at the man holding Ethan. His training took over completely, and he took the man down with precision that would have made his handler proud. The man dropped Ethan, who scrambled back to Sam. But there were still 2 more men, and they had weapons now. Not guns, but long poles with loops on the end, the kind used to control dangerous animals. One loop went around Scout's neck, pulling him away from the group. The young dog yelped in fear and pain. The second man was moving toward Luna, who was trying to crawl away despite her injured paw. "No!" Ethan broke free from Sam and ran toward Luna, throwing his small body over hers. "You can't have her! You can't have any of them!" The man hesitated. Hurting dogs was one thing, but hurting a child on camera, and there were definitely security cameras in this alley, was another. That hesitation cost him. Police sirens were suddenly everywhere, and the alley was flooded with light. Captain Chen's voice boomed over a loudspeaker. "Drop your weapons and step away from the child and animals." The men looked at each other, calculating their chances. The one Bear had taken down was still on the ground, groaning. The one with Scout started to run, dragging the dog with him. But Scout, young and scared as he was, remembered his training too. He twisted, using the man's momentum against him, and managed to slip out of the loop. He ran straight back to Ethan and Luna. The men scattered, running in different directions, but the police were ready. Within minutes, all 3 were in custody. Captain Chen approached them slowly, her hands visible and non-threatening. The dogs were all in defensive positions around Ethan, who was crying, but still protecting Luna with his small body. "It's okay," she said gently. "You're safe now. We got them." "There will be more," Sam said grimly. "Whoever wants these dogs isn't going to stop." Captain Chen nodded. "I know. That's why we're taking this to the federal level. These dogs are military assets, and interfering with them is a federal crime." She looked at Ethan, still clinging to Luna. "But first, let's get them back inside and safe." Dr. Martinez's clinic was a crime scene now, with the broken window and tear gas residue, but she had a secondary treatment room in the back that hadn't been affected. They moved the dogs there, and she immediately went back to treating Luna. Grace arrived in the middle of the chaos, and the terror on her face when she saw the police cars and broken window was something Ethan would never forget. She ran to him, pulling him into her arms, checking him over for injuries. "I'm okay, Mama," Ethan said, though his voice was shaky. "But bad men tried to take Bear and Luna and Scout." Grace looked at Captain Chen. "What is going on? Who are these people?" "We're still figuring that out," Captain Chen admitted. "But it's bigger than just Vincent Holt. These dogs are connected to something major, and until we know what, they're all in danger. Then we take them home, Grace said firmly, surprising everyone, including herself. They can't stay here. It's not safe. We have a fenced yard and an alarm system. Ma'am, I can't ask you to put yourself in danger, Captain Chen said. You're not asking. I'm offering. Grace looked at Ethan, who was back to sitting with the dogs, all of them huddled together for comfort. These dogs protected my son. Now we protect them. Captain Chen considered this. I can post officers at your house. And I'll stay too, Sam added. I've got some friends, veterans like me. We can set up a watch schedule. Are you sure about this? Dr. Martinez asked Grace. These people, whoever they are, they're serious. Grace looked at the dogs. Bear, still standing guard despite everything. Luna, fighting through pain and infection, but still trying to protect Ethan. Scout, young and traumatized, but loyal to his pack. 6 months ago, my husband left us, Grace said quietly. Just walked out. Said he didn't want the responsibility anymore. Ethan cried for weeks, kept asking what we did wrong. Today I watched my 5-year-old son stand up to grown men to protect creatures who needed help. He showed more courage and loyalty than his father ever did. She looked at Captain Chen. So yes, I'm sure. These dogs are family now. Ethan heard his mother's words and ran to her, hugging her tightly. Really, Mama? They can come home? Really, baby? But it's going to be dangerous for a while. Ethan nodded solemnly. That's okay. Families protect each other, right? Right, Grace agreed, hugging him closer. Bear walked over to them, slowly and carefully. He sat down next to Grace and, very gently, placed his paw on her knee. It was a gesture of trust, of acceptance, of gratitude. I think you've been adopted, Sam said with a small smile. Dr. Martinez finished treating Luna and gave them antibiotics and pain medication to take home. She needs to be kept quiet for at least a week. No running, no jumping. The boys will have to be gentle with her. They will be, Ethan said confidently. They love her. As they prepared to leave, Captain Chen pulled Grace aside. There's something else you should know. My brother served with Sergeant Webb. They were in the same unit. Grace's eyes widened. Do you know what happened to him? Officially, he's MIA. Unofficially. Captain Chen hesitated. There are rumors he was captured. Some say he's still alive, but nobody knows for sure. What about the dogs? How did they really end up here? Captain Chen's expression darkened. That's what we're trying to figure out. But I promise you, we'll find the truth. And we'll keep them safe until we do. As they loaded the dogs into Grace's van for the second time that day, Ethan made sure each dog was comfortable. Luna was laid on soft blankets in the back, with Scout curled beside her. Bear sat in the middle row, where he could watch. Everyone. Don't worry, Ethan whispered to them. You're going home now. Our home, and nobody's going to hurt you ever again. But even as he said it, even as they drove away with a police escort, none of them could shake the feeling that this was far from over. Vincent Holt's words echoed in Grace's mind. The people who want them won't stop. The drive home felt different this time. 2 police cars flanked Grace's minivan, their presence both reassuring and unsettling. Ethan sat in the back with Bear, his small hand never leaving the dog's fur, while Scout stayed curled up next to Luna, who was sleeping fitfully from the pain medication. Sam followed in his truck, and through the rearview mirror, Grace could see him constantly checking his surroundings, old military habits dying hard. Mama, why do bad people want to hurt Bear and Luna and Scout? Ethan asked, his voice small in the darkness of the van. Grace struggled to find words that would make sense to a 5-year-old. Sometimes, sweetheart, people want to use things that don't belong to them. The dogs have special training, and bad people want to use that training for bad things. But the dogs wouldn't help bad people, Ethan said with certainty. They're good dogs. That's probably why someone hurt them, Grace said gently. They tried to make them mean, but it didn't work. Bear turned his head at the sound of their voices, and even in the dim light, Grace could see the intelligence in his eyes. It was unsettling sometimes, how much he seemed to understand. Their house looked different when they pulled up. Grace had lived there for 7 years, but tonight it felt exposed, vulnerable. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every car on the street could be watching them. Captain Chen was already there, directing officers to check the perimeter. "We've swept the property," she told Grace as they got out. "Everything's clear. I'll have officers posted front and back all night." Getting the dogs inside was a careful process. Sam carried Luna, who whimpered softly but didn't struggle. Bear and Scout followed closely, their eyes constantly scanning for threats. Once inside, Grace was struck by how empty her house suddenly felt. Not empty of things, but empty of the warmth that makes a house a home. Her ex-husband had taken that with him when he left, or so she'd thought. But watching Ethan carefully arrange blankets on the living room floor for the dogs, she realized maybe warmth wasn't something someone could take. Maybe it was something you created. "They can't sleep alone," Ethan announced. "They'll be scared." "Ethan, honey, dogs usually sleep. Please, Mama, just for tonight. They've been alone for so long." Grace looked at the 3 dogs. Bear had positioned himself by the window, still on guard. Scout was pressed against Luna, who was breathing heavily despite the medication. They looked so lost, so tired, so in need of comfort. "Okay," she said, "but we need to set up properly. Sam, can you help me move the coffee table?" They rearranged the living room, creating a large open space covered with blankets and pillows. It looked like the world's biggest sleepover setup, and Ethan's face lit up with joy. "It's perfect," he said, then turned to the dogs. "See? This is your bed now, all of you together, like a family." Luna managed to lift her head and look at Ethan. Her tail gave the tiniest wag, and she let out a soft whine that sounded almost like gratitude. Scout immediately began exploring the blankets, his young curiosity overcoming his fear for a moment. But Bear remained at the window, watching. "He won't rest," Sam observed. "He's been in survival mode too long. Doesn't know how to stand down." Ethan walked over to Bear and sat down beside him. "It's okay, Bear. The police are outside. You don't have to guard us all by yourself anymore." Bear looked down at the little boy, and something in his posture shifted slightly. He was still alert, but he allowed himself to sit instead of stand. "That's it," Ethan encouraged. "You can rest. I'll help you watch." Grace's heart broke a little at her son's words. No 5-year-old should have to help keep watch. But she also felt a surge of pride at his compassion and bravery. A knock at the door made everyone jump. Bear was on his feet instantly, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Scout joined him, while Luna tried to stand but couldn't manage it. "It's Dr. Martinez," Captain Chen's voice called from outside. She wanted to check on Luna. Grace opened the door to find the veterinarian holding a medical bag and looking concerned. "I couldn't stop thinking about them," she said. "Luna's infection is severe. She needs monitoring." "You didn't have to come," Grace said, touched by the gesture. "Yes, I did, Doctor," Martinez replied. "These dogs have been through enough. I want to make sure they get proper care." She knelt beside Luna, checking her temperature and examining the wound. Bear watched every move, but he didn't growl or interfere. It was like he understood she was helping. "Her fever is still high, Doctor," Martinez said, "but the antibiotics are working. She needs fluids, though." She pulled out an IV bag and stand from her supplies. "This will help." Ethan watched with fascination as she set up the IV. "Does it hurt?" "A little pinch, but then she'll feel better, Doctor," Martinez explained. Luna barely flinched when the needle went in, too exhausted to react much. "You're so brave," Ethan told Luna, gently stroking her head. "The bravest girl dog ever." As Dr. Martinez worked, Sam's phone rang. He stepped away to answer it, and Grace saw his expression darken as he listened. "What is it?" she asked when he hung up. "That was an old friend from military intelligence," Sam said quietly. "He did some digging on Davidson's security. They're not just stealing military dogs. They're selling them to cartels, terrorist organizations, anyone willing to pay." Captain Chen, who had come inside to check on them, immediately pulled out her phone. "I need to report this to the FBI. This is way bigger than local law enforcement." "There's more," Sam continued. "My friend found something about Sergeant Webb. There's been chatter on intelligence channels. He might have been seen alive 3 weeks ago in a prisoner exchange video." Grace gasped. "He's alive?" "Possibly. But here's the thing. If he's being held for ransom or prisoner exchange, his dogs might be leverage. Whoever has him might want the dogs as part of the deal." "That doesn't make sense," Captain Chen said. "Why would terrorists want his specific dogs?" Sam looked at Bear. "Remember that metal object, Doctor? Martinez found under Bear's skin? What if it's not just a tracking chip? What if it's something more? Dr. Martinez looked up from treating Luna. You mean, like data storage? Military dogs sometimes carry encrypted intelligence and implanted chips, Sam explained. Information too sensitive for normal channels. If Bear has something like that, then he's not just valuable for his training, Grace finished. He's carrying secrets. Everyone looked at Bear, who was still watching them with those intelligent eyes. Suddenly, his value and the danger they were all in became much clearer. We need to get that chip analyzed, Captain Chen said. But we can't do it here. It's too dangerous. No, Ethan said firmly, surprising everyone. You're not taking Bear away. He just got safe. Ethan, sweetheart, Grace began, but Ethan wasn't listening. You promised, he said, tears starting to form. You said they could stay with us? Bear seemed to sense Ethan's distress. He moved closer to the boy, pressing against his side in a gesture of comfort and protection. Scout joined them, and even Luna lifted her head to watch. We're not taking them, Captain Chen assured him. But we need to know what's in that chip. It might help us find Sergeant Webb. Their person? Ethan asked, his anger immediately replaced by hope. You could find their soldier? Maybe, Captain Chen said. But first, we need to keep everyone safe. There was another knock at the door, and this time everyone tensed. It was past 11 at night, too late for casual visitors. Pizza delivery, a voice called out. Grace and Captain Chen exchanged glances. Nobody had ordered pizza. Stay back, Captain Chen whispered, drawing her weapon. She moved to the door and looked through the peephole. There's nobody there, but there was a pizza box on the doorstep. Captain Chen called for backup before carefully opening the door. The box was sitting there innocently, but nobody was in sight. Don't touch it, Sam warned. Could be a bomb. They waited for the bomb squad, everyone tense and scared. The dogs were all alert now, even Luna despite her medication. Ethan clung to his mother, but his eyes never left the dogs, making sure they were okay. When the bomb squad arrived and carefully examined the box, they found no explosives. But what they did find was almost worse. Inside was a photo of Ethan at school, taken that day during recess. On the back was written, "We can reach him any time. Give us the dogs." Grace's legs nearly gave out. They were threatening her son. These people, whoever they were threatening her 5-year-old child. That's it, she said, her voice shaking. Maybe we should just... No, Mama, Ethan interrupted. We can't give them Bear and Luna and Scout. They'll hurt them. They're threatening to hurt you, Grace said, tears streaming down her face. I'm not scared, Ethan said, though his little body was trembling. Bear will protect me, won't you, Bear? Bear moved between Ethan and the door, his stance protective and ready. Scout and even Luna struggled to join him, forming a barrier around the child. Captain Chen was on her phone, barking orders. I want surveillance on the school, the house, everywhere this family goes, and I want the FBI here now. Within an hour, the house was full of federal agents. They set up equipment, tapped phones, installed cameras. It was overwhelming and frightening, but Ethan stayed focused on the dogs, making sure they weren't scared by all the strangers. One of the FBI agents, a woman named Agent Sarah Foster, knelt down to Ethan's level. You're being very brave, she told him. I'm not brave, Ethan said. I'm scared. But being scared doesn't mean you don't do the right thing. Agent Foster smiled. That's actually the definition of brave, sweetheart. As the night wore on, they developed a plan. The dogs would stay with Grace and Ethan, but under heavy protection. The FBI would investigate the chip in Bear's shoulder, but they would do it here, not take him away. And they would try to trace whoever had left the pizza box threat. Dr. Martinez stayed to monitor Luna through the night. Sam called his veteran friends, and within 2 hours, 3 more former soldiers arrived, all willing to help protect the dogs and the family. These dogs served our country, one of them, a man named Marcus, said. We don't leave soldiers behind, 4-legged or otherwise. By 3 in the morning, the house had turned into a makeshift command center. But in the middle of all the chaos, something beautiful happened. Bear finally left his post by the window. He walked over to where Ethan had fallen asleep on the blankets and lay down beside him. Scout curled up on Ethan's other side, and Luna, despite her IV line, managed to scoot close enough to rest her head on Ethan's feet. Grace found them like that and had to cover her mouth to keep from sobbing. These dogs, traumatized and hurt as they were, had claimed her son as their person, and he had claimed them right back. "They're healing each other, Doctor," Martinez said softly, coming to stand beside her. "I just hope we can keep them safe long enough to finish healing," Grace replied. The next morning brought new challenges. The local news had somehow gotten word of the story, and there were reporters outside. The headline, "Military Hero Dogs Rescued by Local Boy," was already trending on social media. "This is bad," Agent Foster said. "The more attention this gets, the harder it is to protect them." But Captain Chen had a different perspective. "Or we use it, make it so public that hurting the dogs or Ethan would bring too much attention." They decided to control the narrative. Grace agreed to one interview with Ethan and the dogs to tell their story. The reporter, a woman named Jennifer Park, was known for her compassionate coverage of animal stories. "So, Ethan," Jennifer said gently as the cameras rolled, "tell me about finding the dogs." Ethan, sitting with Bear's head in his lap, spoke simply and honestly. They were cold and wet and scared. Everyone was being mean to them, but they weren't mean back. They were just sad. "And you decided to help them?" "Somebody had to," Ethan said. "They didn't have anybody else." The interview was powerful in its simplicity. A little boy who saw suffering and chose to help, despite the danger. Dogs who had served their country, abandoned and abused, still gentle and loyal. By noon, the video had been shared thousands of times. But with attention came problems. Vincent Holt, out on bail, gave his own interview, claiming the dogs were dangerous and that Grace was putting her child at risk for attention. "Those animals are trained killers," he said to another reporter. "They could snap at any moment. That child is in danger." The public response was swift and divided. Some supported Vincent, calling for the dogs to be removed. Others defended Ethan and his family, pointing out that the dogs had shown nothing but gentleness. Then something unexpected happened. A man called the FBI tip line, claiming to have information about Sergeant Webb. He would only talk to the boy who saved the dogs. Agent Foster was suspicious, but they were desperate for leads. They arranged a video call with full surveillance and tracking. The man on the screen was thin and haggard, calling from what looked like a refugee camp. "My name is David Park," he said. "I was held prisoner with Sergeant Webb. He's alive, but barely. The people holding him want those dogs, specifically Bear." "Why?" Agent Foster asked. "I don't know exactly, but Webb told me Bear has something important. Something about a mission that went wrong, evidence of war crimes. He said if anything happened to him, Bear would be the proof." Grace felt the weight of this revelation. These dogs weren't just pets or even just military animals. They were witnesses to something terrible. "Where is Sergeant Webb now?" Captain Chen asked. "Still captive. But here's the thing. The people holding him have contacts in America. They're the ones trying to get the dogs, if they can't get them." David paused, his face grim. "They'll kill Webb and anyone else who knows about this." Ethan, who had been listening, spoke up. "We have to save him. He's Bear's person." "It's not that simple, sweetheart," Agent Foster said gently. "Yes, it is," Ethan insisted. "Bear would save him if he could, so we have to help." That afternoon, while the adults were planning and discussing, Ethan sat with the dogs in the backyard. The police had secured the area so they could have some fresh air. Luna was doing better, able to stand for short periods, though she still limped heavily. "I'm going to find your person," Ethan told Bear. "I promise." Bear looked at him with those deep eyes and then did something he hadn't done before. He licked Ethan's face just once, gently. It was acceptance, trust, maybe even love. Scout was playing with a tennis ball Sam had brought, showing glimpses of the young dog he should have been all along. Luna watched from her blanket, her tail wagging slightly whenever Scout brought the ball near her. "They're getting better," Ethan told his mother when she came outside. "So are you," Grace said, sitting beside him. "You haven't had nightmares about Daddy leaving in 2 weeks." Ethan thought about this. "I don't feel sad about Daddy anymore. Bear and Luna and Scout need me. I don't have time to be sad." Grace pulled him close. "You're the bravest person I know." "I'm not brave, Mama. I just love them." That evening, things took another turn. Dr. Martinez arrived to check on Luna and decided to x-ray Bear to get a better look at the chip. What she found made everyone gather around the computer screen. "It's not just one chip," she said, pointing to the image. There are 3 separate devices. One looks like a standard tracker, but these other 2. I've never seen anything like them. Agent Foster called in a specialist who arrived within an hour. He was a young man named Tech Specialist Ryan Cooper, and he was excited by what he saw. "This is military-grade encryption storage," he said. Each chip could hold gigabytes of data, video, audio, documents, but extracting it without the proper codes could destroy the data. "So we need Sergeant Webb," Captain Chen said. "Or someone else from his unit who would know the codes," Ryan replied. Sam had been quiet, but now he spoke up. "I might know someone. Tom Rodriguez, he was in Webb's unit. He's stateside, recovering at Walter Reed." Calls were made, and by 10 that night, they had Tom Rodriguez on video call from his hospital bed. His left arm was gone, and burn scars covered half his face, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "Bear!" he exclaimed when he saw the dog on screen. "And Luna and Scout! I can't believe they're alive." The dogs reacted to his voice, all 3 moving toward the screen, tails wagging. Bear let out a soft whine that sounded like recognition. "You know them?" Grace asked. "Know them? I worked with them for 2 years. Bear saved my life more times than I can count." His voice broke. "When I got hit and they evacuated me, I begged them to send the dogs home safe. They promised me they would." "What happened to Sergeant Webb?" Agent Foster asked. Tom's expression darkened. "We were investigating something we shouldn't have been. Found evidence that some contractors were selling weapons to insurgents, playing both sides. Webb documented everything, said he was storing it somewhere safe. Next thing we knew, our convoy was hit. Webb was taken, I was injured, and the dogs. They told me the dogs were being sent home." "Do you know the encryption codes?" Ryan asked. Tom nodded. "Webb and I each knew half. Security measure. I can give you my half, but without his." "We need to find him," Ethan said firmly. "Bear needs his person, and his person needs him." Tom looked at Ethan through the screen. "You're the boy who saved them?" Ethan nodded shyly. "Thank you," Tom said, tears streaming down his scarred face. "Thank you for being their angel when they needed one." The call ended with Tom providing his half of the encryption codes and a promise to help however he could. But they still needed Webb's half, and he was still a prisoner somewhere. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay on the blankets with the dogs, thinking hard. Bear was awake too, standing guard as always. "We're going to find him," Ethan whispered to Bear. "I don't know how, but we will." Bear moved closer and, for the first time, lay down beside Ethan while still awake and alert. It was trust, pure and simple. Meanwhile, Grace was in the kitchen with Agent Foster and Captain Chen, going over security plans for the next day. Ethan had to go to school. The psychiatrist said maintaining routine was important for his emotional health. "We'll have undercover agents there," Agent Foster assured her. "He'll be safe." But Grace couldn't shake her fear. "What if they try something? Then they'll have to go through us," Captain Chen said firmly. "And the dogs, don't underestimate their protective instincts." As if to prove her point, Scout appeared in the kitchen doorway, checking on them before returning to Ethan's side. "They take shifts," Grace realized. Bear watches the front, Scout patrols, and even Luna watches from her spot. "They're still operational," Captain Chen observed, "still working as a unit." The next morning came too quickly. Ethan didn't want to leave the dogs, and they clearly didn't want him to go. Bear actually blocked the door when Ethan tried to leave for school. "I have to go, Bear," Ethan explained patiently, "but I'll come back. I promise." Bear looked at him for a long moment, then stepped aside. But Scout grabbed Ethan's backpack strap gently in his teeth, trying to keep him from leaving. "Maybe," Grace started, then shook her head. "No, that's crazy." "What?" Agent Foster asked. "I was going to say maybe one of them could come to school with him. Like a service dog. But that's actually not a bad idea," Captain Chen interrupted. "Scout's the least injured and the youngest. He could pass for a therapy dog, and it would give Ethan protection." "Easy." Were made, permissions granted under special circumstances, and an hour later, Ethan walked into his kindergarten classroom with Scout beside him, wearing a vest that said, "Working dog, do not pet." The other children were fascinated, and Ethan's teacher, Miss Rivera, was surprisingly supportive. "Class, Ethan's dog Scout is here to help him feel safe. He's a special dog who used to help soldiers, and now he's helping Ethan. The day went smoothly until recess. Ethan was playing with his friends, Scout watchfully nearby, when a man approached the fence. He was wearing a maintenance uniform, but something about him made Scout's hackles rise. "Hey kid," the man called to Ethan. "That's a nice dog. Can I pet him?" Scout moved between Ethan and the fence, a low growl rumbling in his chest. "He's working," Ethan said, remembering what he'd been told to say. "You can't pet him." The man's expression changed, becoming less friendly. "I just want to see him up close." "Come here, boy." Scout's growl became louder, and Ms. Rivera noticed the commotion. She started toward them, but the man was already reaching through the fence. What happened next was pure training and instinct. Scout grabbed Ethan's shirt and pulled him backward, away from the fence, just as the man's hand came through holding something. The undercover FBI agent posing as a playground monitor was on the man in seconds, tackling him to the ground. The object in his hand turned out to be a tranquilizer dart, the kind used on large animals. He'd been trying to drug Scout, probably to grab Ethan in the chaos that would follow. The school went into lockdown, parents were called, and within minutes the playground was swarming with law enforcement. The man was arrested, but he wouldn't talk, demanding a lawyer immediately. Grace arrived at the school in a panic, having received the call that there had been an incident. She found Ethan in the principal's office, Scout pressed against his side, both of them shaking but unharmed. "Scout saved me," Ethan told her, his voice small and scared. "He pulled me away from the bad man." Grace dropped to her knees and hugged both boy and dog, tears streaming down her face. "Thank God for you, Scout. Thank you for protecting my baby." Scout licked her face gently, his tail wagging slightly despite the stress of the situation. Agent Foster arrived shortly after. "We need to get them somewhere safe. This is escalating." "Where?" Grace asked. "If they can get to him at school, where is safe?" "I have an idea," Sam said. He'd arrived with Tom Rodriguez, who was in a wheelchair but had checked himself out of the hospital against medical advice. "My family has a cabin in the mountains," Tom said. "It's remote, defensible, and off the grid. We could take them there while the FBI works on finding Webb." "I can't just disappear," Grace protested. "I have work, responsibilities." "With respect, ma'am," Tom said, "your biggest responsibility is keeping your son safe. And these dogs, they're not just animals anymore. They're witnesses to war crimes. They're the key to finding Webb, and apparently they're the only thing standing between your son and whoever wants them." Grace looked at Ethan, who was whispering something to Scout, probably reassuring him that everything would be okay. Her 5-year-old son, comforting a military dog after an attempted kidnapping. "Okay," she said, "we go to the cabin." The evacuation was planned for that night. They would leave in unmarked vehicles, taking back roads with FBI escorts front and back. Luna was stable enough to travel, though doctor. Martinez would come with them to continue her treatment. As they prepared to leave, Ethan insisted on packing the dog's things himself. He carefully folded their blankets, packed their food and water bowls, and made sure Luna's medicine was secure. "We're going on an adventure," he told the dogs. "Somewhere safe where the bad people can't find us." Bear watched him pack with those intelligent eyes, seeming to understand. Scout stayed glued to Ethan's side, still on high alert from the day's events. Luna, from her bed, watched everything with a calm acceptance. Just as they were about to leave, Captain Chen's phone rang. She answered, and her face went pale. "Vincent Holt is dead," she announced. "Found in his cell. Apparent suicide, but you don't believe it," Agent Foster finished. "He was about to make a deal, give us information in exchange for a lighter sentence. Now he's dead. The implications were clear. Whoever was behind this was cleaning house, eliminating anyone who could expose them." "We need to go now," Tom said urgently, "before they realize we're moving the dogs." The convoy of vehicles pulled out into the night. Ethan and Grace in one car with the dogs, agents in others. As they drove away from their house, Ethan looked back at it, wondering if they'd ever return. "It's okay, baby," Grace said, though she was wondering the same thing. Bear put his head on Ethan's lap, a gesture of comfort that made the boy smile despite his fear. Scout was looking out the window, watching for threats, while Luna slept fitfully in the back. They drove for 3 hours, taking a winding route to avoid being followed. Twice they had to stop because the agents thought they spotted surveillance. Each time, the dogs went on high alert, ready to protect their people, Finally, they turned onto a dirt road that led up into the mountains. The cabin appeared in the headlights, a sturdy log structure that looked like it could withstand anything. "Welcome to Fort Webb," Tom said with a sad smile. "Marcus and I built this together, planning to retire here someday." The cabin was bigger than Grace expected, with multiple rooms and a large open living area. It was clean and well-maintained, with photos on the walls of Tom and another man in military uniforms, smiling with Bear, Luna, and Scout. "That's Marcus," Tom said, seeing Ethan looking at the photos. "Your dog's first person." Ethan studied the photos intently. Marcus Webb was tall and strong-looking, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. In every photo, he was touching one of the dogs, and they were looking at him with obvious devotion. "He loves them," Ethan said. "It wasn't a question." More than anything, Tom confirmed, they were his family. As they settled in for the night, setting up the dogs' beds and making sure Luna was comfortable, nobody noticed the small drone hovering just beyond the tree line, its camera focused on the cabin. The people hunting them had resources and reach beyond what anyone had imagined. Inside, Ethan lay down with the dogs, feeling safer than he had in days. Bear was by the door, Scout by the window, and Luna beside him. They were still protecting him, even here. "Tomorrow, we start working on the chips," Agent Foster said to the adults. "With Tom's codes, we might be able to access at least some of the data." "And then?" Grace asked. "Then we find out what's worth killing for," Agent Foster replied. "And hopefully, we find Sergeant Webb." But finding Webb would prove to be more dangerous than any of them imagined, because Webb knew something that could bring down powerful people, and those people would do anything to keep their secrets buried. As Ethan drifted off to sleep, surrounded by his canine protectors, he made a promise to himself and to them. They would find Sergeant Webb. They would reunite Bear, Luna, and Scout with their person. And somehow, they would all be a family. He didn't know that, at that very moment, hundreds of miles away, Sergeant Marcus Webb was being tortured for information about his dogs and what they carried. And he was refusing to break, holding on to hope that somewhere, somehow, his dogs were safe. The real battle was just beginning. The morning at the mountain cabin brought a false sense of peace. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and for a moment, Grace could almost pretend they were just on vacation. But then she saw Bear standing rigid by the door. His ears perked at something only he could hear, and reality crashed back. "What is it, boy?" Tom asked, wheeling himself closer to the window. His remaining hand moved to the pistol he kept within reach. Old habits from combat, never truly fading. Scout joined Bear, both dogs focused on the tree line. Luna, despite her injury, struggled to stand, wanting to be part of whatever was happening. "Could be wildlife," Agent Foster said, but she was already checking her weapon. Then they heard it. The distant sound of engines, multiple vehicles coming up the mountain road. "That's not wildlife," Sam said grimly, moving to another window. "We've got company." Agent Foster was on her radio immediately. "All units, we have unknown vehicles approaching. Positions now." But before the FBI escorts could respond, the radio crackled with static, then went dead. "They're jamming us," Ryan Cooper, the tech specialist, said, frantically working on his equipment. "Military-grade jammers. We're cut off." Grace pulled Ethan close, her heart pounding. "It's okay, baby. The agents will protect us." But Ethan wasn't looking at his mother. He was watching Bear, whose entire demeanor had changed. The dog's body was coiled like a spring, ready for action. This wasn't fear. This was preparation. "Bear knows what to do," Ethan said quietly. "He's done this before." The vehicles stopped just out of sight, hidden by the trees. Then came silence, which was somehow worse than noise. Everyone waited, tense and ready. A voice suddenly boomed through a megaphone. "We don't want anyone to get hurt. Send out the dogs, and everyone else can leave safely." "Like hell," Tom muttered, checking his weapon. Agent Foster moved to the door. "This is the FBI. You're surrounded. Surrender now." Laughter echoed through the megaphone. "No, Agent Foster. You're surrounded. Check your perimeter." Through the windows, they could see figures moving through the trees, many figures. This wasn't a small operation. This was an assault team. "How many?" Grace whispered. "At least 20, Sam replied, his military experience allowing him to spot what others might miss. "Professional formation," These aren't thugs. They're mercenaries. Dr. Martinez, who had been silent until now, spoke up. We need to get the data from the chips. If we're going to be taken, at least we can transmit the information first. The jammers, Ryan said, frustrated. I can't send anything out. Then we store it locally, Tom said. Multiple copies. Hidden. Someone will find it. As Ryan and Tom worked frantically to extract data from Bear's chips using the partial codes they had, Ethan did something unexpected. He walked to the center of the room and sat down on the floor. Ethan, what are you doing? Grace asked, alarmed. Something, mister. Tom taught me from the pictures, Ethan said. He made a specific hand gesture, one he'd seen in the photos of Marcus with the dogs. All 3 dogs immediately moved to him, forming a protective triangle around him. Bear faced the door, Luna the windows, and Scout watched the back entrance. It was a defensive formation, perfectly executed. How did you know that command? Tom asked, amazed. I watched the videos on your computer, Ethan admitted, the ones of Sergeant Webb training them. I wanted to learn how to talk to them like he did. Before anyone could respond, smoke canisters crashed through the windows. Gas began filling the cabin immediately. Masks! Agent Foster shouted, but they only had a few, and the gas was thick and choking. Bear made a decision. He grabbed Ethan's shirt and began pulling him toward the back of the cabin, where Tom had mentioned an old root cellar. Scout helped, while Luna, despite her injury, stayed behind them, watching for threats. Follow the dogs! Tom shouted through the smoke. They stumbled after Bear, who seemed to know exactly where he was going. He led them to a hidden door in the floor, partially covered by a rug. His training had included recognizing escape routes, and he was using every bit of it now. They tumbled down into the cellar just as the main door of the cabin burst open. Boots thundered across the floor above them. Grace held Ethan tight, trying to muffle his coughing from the gas. Find them! A voice ordered from above. Check every room! In the darkness of the cellar, Bear positioned himself at the bottom of the stairs, ready to attack anyone who came down. Scout pressed against Ethan, while Luna, panting heavily from the exertion, still tried to maintain her watch. Agent Foster whispered into her dead radio, hoping the recording function still worked. This is Agent Sarah Foster, FBI. We are under attack at the Mountain Safe House. Multiple hostiles. They want the military dogs. If something happens to us, know that... The cellar door was ripped open, flooding them with light. A figure in tactical gear looked down, weapon raised. Found them. Bear launched himself up the stairs with a speed that belied his months of starvation. He hit the mercenary with the full force of his training, taking him down before he could fire. Scout was right behind him, while Luna stayed with Ethan, her body a shield between him and danger. Don't hurt the dogs, someone shouted. We need them alive. That hesitation was their mistake. Bear and Scout worked in perfect synchronization, using tactics they had learned in combat zones. They didn't kill. That wasn't their training with civilians, but they incapacitated with precision. Call them off! A new voice, cultured and cold, spoke from the cabin's entrance. Or I start shooting the humans. Everyone froze. Walking into view was a man in an expensive suit, completely out of place in the mountain cabin. He held a pistol casually, like someone very comfortable with violence. Mr. Davidson, I presume, Agent Foster said, climbing out of the cellar with her hands visible. The man smiled. Very good, Agent Foster, though I prefer General Davidson, retired, of course. You're behind Davidson's security, Tom said, pulling himself up despite his wheelchair being left above. You've been stealing military dogs. Stealing is such an ugly word, Davidson said. I prefer repurposing. These animals are worth millions to the right buyers. But these 3, he looked at Bear, Luna, and Scout. These 3 are special. Because of what they know, Grace said, holding Ethan tightly. Davidson's smile widened. The boy's mother. You have no idea what you've gotten involved in, do you? These dogs were present during a very sensitive operation. One that went wrong. They carry evidence that could destroy careers, end lives, bring down an entire military contractor company. Evidence of war crimes, Tom said flatly. Evidence of business, Davidson corrected. War is business, Sergeant Rodriguez. Or have you forgotten that in your sentimental retirement? Bear growled low in his throat, and Davidson pointed his weapon at Ethan. Call him off, boy, or your mother will be very sad. Bear, stay, Ethan said, his voice shaking but clear. Bear stopped growling but remained ready. Smart child, Davidson said. Now, here's what's going to happen. The dogs come with us. You all stay here, unharmed. Everyone wins. Except Sergeant Webb, Ethan said suddenly. He's still prisoner because of you. Davidson's expression flickered with surprise. What do you know about Webb? I know he's Bear's person, and Bear misses him, and you're keeping them apart because you're mean. The simple childish accusation seemed to amuse Davidson. Mean? I'm practical, child. Webb knows too much. He saw too much, just like his dogs. Where is he? Agent Foster demanded. Safe. For now, his continued breathing depends on my getting these dogs and what they carry. Davidson gestured to his men. Tranquilize them. No! Ethan broke free from his mother and threw himself over Bear. You can't take them! One of the mercenaries approached with a tranquilizer gun, but Luna did something extraordinary. Despite her injured paw, despite the pain she must have been in, she lunged forward and knocked the gun from his hands. It skittered across the floor. In the chaos that followed, several things happened at once. Scout grabbed the fallen tranquilizer gun in his mouth and ran. Bear positioned himself over Ethan, refusing to move. And Luna, brave Luna, stood on 3 legs between Davidson and the others, growling with a ferocity none of them had seen before. Impressive, Davidson said, but futile. That's when they heard it. Helicopters. Multiple helicopters approaching fast. Davidson's radio crackled. Sir, we've got military choppers incoming. 3 Black Hawks. Impossible, Davidson said. I have people in every agency. No one knows we're here. Tom smiled grimly. You forgot about one person. The one person who would move heaven and earth for these dogs. Through the window, they could see the helicopters approaching, and in the lead chopper, visible through the open door, was a figure in military fatigues. Even from a distance, even after months of captivity, the dogs recognized him. Bear's entire body began shaking, not with fear, but with joy. He let out a howl that seemed to come from his very soul. Luna joined him, her voice cracking with emotion. Scout dropped the tranquilizer gun and began barking with pure happiness. Marcus, Tom breathed. How? The helicopter circled the cabin, and ropes dropped. Soldiers fast roped down, surrounding Davidson's mercenaries within seconds. Drop your weapons! The command came from the lead soldier, and Davidson's men, faced with actual military forces, complied. Marcus Webb entered the cabin, and time seemed to stop. He was thinner than in the photos, with new scars and a pronounced limp, but his eyes were the same, kind, intelligent, and now filled with tears. Bear, he said softly. Bear couldn't contain himself. He bounded across the room, nearly knocking Marcus over in his enthusiasm. The reunion was everything Ethan had imagined. Bear crying. Yes, dogs could cry. Ethan was sure of it. Marcus dropping to his knees to embrace his dog, both of them shaking with emotion. Luna limped over as fast as she could, and Marcus gasped when he saw her injury. Oh, Luna girl, what happened to you? She pressed her head against his chest, her tail wagging so hard her whole body moved. Scout hung back, uncertain. He'd been younger when Marcus disappeared, less bonded. But Marcus held out his hand, and Scout crept forward, then suddenly rushed into the embrace. My boys, my girl, Marcus kept saying. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Ethan watched with tears streaming down his face. This was right. This was how it should be. But Davidson wasn't finished. In the confusion of the reunion, he pulled a second weapon, a small pistol from an ankle holster. He aimed it at Marcus's back. Ethan saw it first. No, he screamed. Bear turned at Ethan's cry, saw the threat, and moved. But he wasn't the fastest this time. That honor went to Scout, young Scout, who had been protecting Ethan for days now. He launched himself at Davidson just as the gun fired. The shot was loud in the enclosed space. Scout yelped as he hit Davidson, knocking him down. The gun flew from Davidson's hand, and soldiers immediately restrained him. Scout! Ethan ran to the dog, who was lying on his side, blood spreading from a wound in his shoulder. Dr. Martinez was there in seconds, her medical bag already open. It's not fatal, she said quickly, working to stop the bleeding. But he needs surgery. Now. Marcus was beside them immediately, his hands gentle on Scout's head. "Hey, buddy. You're okay. You're going to be okay." Scout's tail wagged weakly, and he looked at Ethan with those expressive eyes, as if asking if he'd done good. "You're the bravest dog ever," Ethan told him through his tears. "The very bravest." The medevac helicopter arrived within minutes. As they loaded Scout for transport with Dr. Martinez accompanying him, Marcus turned to Ethan. "You're the boy who saved them," he said. It wasn't a question. Ethan nodded, suddenly shy. Marcus dropped to one knee, putting himself at Ethan's eye level. "I owe you everything. They told me what you did, how you stood up to adults, how you protected them. You gave them something I couldn't, safety and love when they needed it most." "I just didn't want them to be alone," Ethan said simply. Marcus pulled him into a hug, and Ethan felt something he hadn't felt since his father left, the feeling of being protected by someone strong and good. "They're never going to be alone again," Marcus promised, "and neither are you." The next hours were a blur. Scout's surgery at the military veterinary hospital was successful. The bullet had missed anything vital, though he would need weeks of recovery. Luna's paw was properly treated by military vets who specialized in combat injuries. Bear's chips were carefully extracted, revealing video evidence of Davidson's company selling weapons to enemy forces, footage that would lead to dozens of arrests. Davidson himself, faced with overwhelming evidence, began talking. He revealed a network of corruption that reached into multiple defense contractors and several military officials. The scandal would make headlines for months. But for Ethan, none of that mattered as much as what happened 3 days later. They were all at the military hospital. Ethan, Grace, Marcus, Tom, Sam, and the dogs. Scout was still weak but improving. Luna was walking better with proper treatment. Bear hadn't left Marcus's side for more than a few minutes since their reunion. "I have something to ask you," Marcus said to Grace. "I've been offered a medical discharge and a job training military dogs here in the States. I'll be stationed just an hour from your town, but..." "But?" Grace prompted. "But I can't take the dogs right away. I need to find a place to live, get settled. It could take months. And honestly," he looked at Ethan, who was sitting on the floor with all 3 dogs around him, "I don't think they want to leave him." It was true. Even reunited with Marcus, the dogs constantly checked on Ethan. They had bonded with him in a way that went beyond training or commands. He had been their light in the darkness. "What are you saying?" Grace asked, though she thought she knew. "I'm saying maybe they don't have to choose," Marcus said. "Maybe we could work something out. Shared custody, you might say. They could stay with you while I get settled. I could visit, help with their care and training. And Ethan..." He paused, clearly emotional. "Ethan could learn to work with them properly. He has a gift. The way they respond to him, it's remarkable." Ethan's face lit up like the sun. "Really? They could stay with us?" "If your mom agrees," Marcus said. "It's a big responsibility." Grace looked at her son, surrounded by 3 German shepherds who would die for him, who had already proven they would. She thought about the empty feeling in their house before the dogs arrived, the sadness that had lingered after Ethan's father left. That was all gone now, replaced by purpose and love and a strange, wonderful extended family that included military heroes, both human and canine. "Yes," she said. "Absolutely yes." The celebration that followed was interrupted by Captain Chen arriving with news. "We found something else in the data from Bear's chips. Contact information for a network that helps veterans and military dogs reunite. Apparently, Webb had been investigating it before his capture, suspecting some dogs were being diverted from it." "We should shut it down," Agent Foster said. "No," Marcus said firmly. "We should fix it. Make it what it should be. A real network to help military dogs find homes, to help veterans reconnect with their canine partners." He looked at Ethan. "And I know just the spokesperson to help us launch it." That's how, 6 months later, Ethan found himself standing on a stage in front of hundreds of people, with Bear, Luna, and Scout beside him. Luna walked with only the slightest limp now. Scout's shoulder had healed completely, leaving only a scar that Ethan called his hero mark. Bear stood tall and proud, his coat gleaming with health. "My name is Ethan Miller," he said into the microphone, his voice clear and strong. 6 months ago, I found 3 dogs in the rain. Everyone said they were dangerous, but they weren't. They were just scared and hurt and alone. The audience was silent, captivated by the simple honesty of the 6-year-old boy. Bear, Luna, and Scout taught me something important, Ethan continued. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you help anyway. Being strong doesn't mean you don't cry. It means you keep going even when you're sad. And being a family doesn't mean you're all the same. It means you choose to love each other no matter what. He paused, looking at Marcus, who was standing off to the side with Grace, both of them wiping away tears. These dogs served our country. They protected soldiers and saved lives. And when they needed someone to protect them, when they needed someone to save them, they found me. But really, they saved me too. They saved me from being sad about my daddy leaving. They saved me from being afraid. They saved me from thinking I was too small to make a difference. The crowd was crying now, many of them veterans who understood all too well the bond between human and dog in combat. So today, Ethan said, we're starting something new. The Second Chance Heroes Network. It's for military dogs who need homes and for veterans who miss their dogs. Because every hero deserves a second chance, and every dog deserves to be loved. The applause was thunderous. People stood, cheering for the little boy and his 3 German shepherds. But Ethan wasn't done. I want to tell you about Bear, he said, and the crowd quieted. Bear's job was to find dangerous things and protect his soldiers. Even when he was hurt and hungry, he protected Luna and Scout. Even when people were mean to him, he stayed gentle. He never stopped being good, even when everything was bad. Bear looked up at Ethan, and the boy could swear the dog understood every word. Luna, Ethan continued, got hurt protecting Scout from bullies. She couldn't walk right, but she still tried to guard us. She showed me that being hurt doesn't make you weak. It makes you brave for keeping going. Luna's tail wagged, and she leaned against Ethan's leg. And Scout, Ethan said, his voice cracking slightly. Scout took a bullet for his family. He's the youngest, but he's the bravest. He shows me every day that protecting the people you love is the most important job in the world. Scout sat up straighter, as if proud of his hero mark. These dogs didn't just serve in the military, Ethan concluded. They're still serving. They serve by showing us what loyalty looks like. They serve by teaching us about courage. They serve by proving that love is stronger than hate, that kindness is stronger than cruelty, and that sometimes the smallest person can make the biggest difference. He looked directly at the camera broadcasting the event. If you see an animal that needs help, don't walk away. If you know a veteran who misses their K9 partner, help them reconnect. If you have room in your heart and your home, consider adopting a retired military dog, because every act of kindness matters, every moment of bravery counts, and every second chance can change a life. The event raised over $1 million for the Second Chance Heroes Network. Within a year, they had reunited dozens of veterans with their K9 partners and found homes for hundreds of retired military dogs. But the biggest change was in Ethan's own life. Marcus had become a permanent fixture, not just as the dog's other handler, but as a father figure to Ethan. He taught him how to properly work with the dogs, how to read their signals, how to honor their service while letting them also just be dogs. Grace and Marcus grew closer too, bonded by their shared love for Ethan and the dogs. What had started as a co-parenting arrangement for 3 German shepherds had grown into something more, something that looked a lot like the family Grace had thought she'd never have again. A year after that first rainy day, they all stood in the same spot where Ethan had first seen the dogs. The bus shelter had been replaced with a proper covered area, and a plaque had been installed. It read, "On this spot, a 5-year-old boy chose kindness over fear." Ethan Miller saved 3 military dogs, Bear, Luna, and Scout, who had served our country and been abandoned. His bravery reminds us that heroes come in all sizes, and that one act of compassion can change the world. "It's not right," Ethan said, reading the plaque. "What do you mean?" Grace asked, concerned. "It says I saved them," Ethan explained, "but that's not true. We saved each other." Bear woofed in agreement, Luna wagged her tail, and Scout did a little spin of joy. They were all healed now, bodies mended, spirits restored, family found. Marcus put his hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You're right, buddy. That's the thing about rescue. You never really know who's saving who." As they walked home together, Ethan, Grace, Marcus, and the 3 dogs, people stopped to watch them pass. Some recognized them from the news, others just saw a happy family out for a walk. But everyone who saw them smiled because there was something magical about the sight of a little boy surrounded by 3 German shepherds, all of them walking with the confidence of creatures who knew they were exactly where they belonged. That night, as Ethan lay in his bed with Bear on one side and Scout on the other, Luna preferred her orthopedic bed now, though she stayed close. He thought about everything that had happened. A year ago, he had been a sad, lonely little boy whose father had left. Now he had a family bigger and stranger and more wonderful than he could have imagined. "Thank you," he whispered to the dogs. "Thank you for choosing me." Bear's tail thumped against the bed. Scout snuggled closer. Luna lifted her head and looked at him with those wise eyes that had seen so much. And in that moment, Ethan understood something important. Love wasn't about being perfect. It wasn't about being whole or unbroken or unscarred. Love was about choosing to see the good in others, choosing to stand by them when things got hard, choosing to believe that everyone deserved a second chance. The dogs had taught him that. They had been broken and abandoned, hurt and afraid, but they had never stopped being capable of love. They had never stopped being heroes. They had just been waiting for someone to see them for who they really were. 5 years later, Ethan stood on another stage, this time at his elementary school graduation. He was 11 now, taller and more confident, but still the same kind-hearted boy who had refused to walk away from 3 dogs in need. Bear was getting gray around his muzzle now, moving a bit slower but still vigilant. Luna had arthritis in her injured leg, but remained the dignified lady she'd always been. Scout was in his prime, trained now as a certified therapy dog, who visited hospitals and schools with Ethan. "For my graduation speech," Ethan said to his classmates and their families, "I want to tell you about the day that changed my life. It was raining, and I saw 3 dogs that everyone said were dangerous." As he told the story, he could see its impact on the audience. Some of the parents remembered when it had happened, the news coverage, the controversy. But hearing it from Ethan, hearing about the fear and doubt and ultimate triumph, made it new again. "People ask me if I was scared," Ethan said. "Of course I was scared. The dogs were big, and everyone said they were mean. But my mom taught me something important. The right thing to do is usually the hard thing to do, and helping those who can't help themselves is always the right thing." He looked at Marcus and Grace, now married, sitting in the front row. His little sister, 2-year-old Hope, was on Marcus's lap, clapping even though she didn't fully understand what was happening. "Bear, Luna, and Scout didn't just teach me about bravery," Ethan continued. "They taught me about resilience. They survived 6 months on the streets, hungry and hurt and afraid. But they never gave up on each other. They never stopped being good, even when the world was bad to them." He paused, collecting his thoughts. "We live in a world that sometimes seems scary and mean. We see bad things on the news. We hear about people hurting each other. It would be easy to become hard, to stop caring, to walk past those who need help. But that's exactly when we need to be brave. That's exactly when we need to choose kindness." The auditorium was silent, everyone hanging on his words. Every one of us will have a moment when we see someone or something that needs help. It might be a person, an animal, a cause. And in that moment, we'll have a choice. We can walk away, tell ourselves it's not our problem, that we're too small or too young or too powerless to make a difference. Or we can be brave. We can step forward. We can choose to help. He smiled, looking at his dogs, who were waiting patiently in their designated spot beside the stage. "I was 5 years old when I made my choice. I was small and scared, but I knew leaving those dogs in the rain was wrong. That one choice led to everything good in my life now. It brought me my best friends, my dad," he nodded to Marcus, "and showed me who I want to be. So here's my challenge to all of you," Ethan said, addressing his fellow graduates. "Don't wait until you're older or bigger or braver to make a difference. Start now. Look for those who need help. Stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. Choose kindness, even when it's hard. Choose love, even when it's scary. Because you never know. The life you save might just save you right back." The applause was immediate and sustained. People stood, many wiping away tears, but Ethan wasn't quite finished. "One more thing," he said as the applause died down. "Some of you know that Scout is now a therapy dog. What you might not know is that Bear and Luna, despite their age, have been certified as educational support animals. Starting next year, all 3 of them will be working with our school district's new program to help kids who are struggling, kids whose parents are deployed, kids dealing with trauma, kids who just need a friend who won't judge them. He grinned. So, if you see them in the halls next year, remember their story. Remember that heroes can have 4 legs and fur. Remember that second chances can change everything. And remember that sometimes the best families are the ones you choose. As he left the stage, his dogs met him at the bottom of the steps. Bear, moving carefully but proudly. Luna, dignified despite her limp. Scout, bouncing with enthusiasm. They surrounded him as they had that first day at the vet clinic, as they had every day since. The local news interviewed him afterward, the reporter asking, "Ethan, what would you say to other kids who want to help animals but don't know how?" Ethan thought for a moment, his hand on Bear's head. Start small. Be kind to every animal you meet. Learn about them. Volunteer at shelters if you can. But most importantly, don't walk away when you see one in need. Even if you can't do everything, you can do something. And something is always better than nothing. "And what's next for you and the dogs?" the reporter asked. "Well," Ethan said with a smile, "Bear's getting older, so he's going to be doing less active work and more visiting. He's earned his rest. Luna's going to keep being the queen she is, helping kids learn to read by being a patient listener. And Scout and I are training for search and rescue certification. He saved my life, and Marcus's life. Maybe he can save others too." The reporter turned to the camera. "There you have it, folks. A boy and his dogs, proving every day that heroes come in all shapes and sizes. This is Jennifer Park, reporting from Riverside Elementary, where hope has 4 legs and a wagging tail." That night, there was a celebration at their house. The backyard was full of people, veterans who had been reunited with their dogs through the Second Chance Heroes Network, families who had adopted retired military dogs, FBI agents like Agent Foster who had become family friends, Captain Chen, who was now the police chief, Dr. Martinez, who had opened a clinic specifically for military and service animals, Sam and his veteran friends who had become like grandfathers to Ethan, and Tom, who despite his injuries had become a powerful advocate for wounded warriors and their K9 partners. As the sun set, Ethan found himself sitting on the same spot where he used to sit with the dogs when they first came home. Bear was beside him, his head on Ethan's lap. Luna was lying nearby, watching the party with calm satisfaction. Scout was playing with Hope, gentle as always with the toddler. "You know what, Bear?" Ethan said softly. "That first day, when I saw you in the rain, I thought I was saving you. But you saved me. You all did. You saved me from being just another kid with a sad story. You made me brave. You made me someone who helps. You made me who I'm supposed to be." Bear looked up at him with those deep brown eyes, now clouded with age but still full of love and understanding. His tail wagged once, twice, as if to say, "We saved each other." Marcus came over and sat beside them. "Penny for your thoughts, buddy?" "Just thinking about how different everything could have been," Ethan said. "If I hadn't gone to the store that day, if it hadn't been raining, if Mom had said no, if you hadn't come back. But it did happen that way," Marcus said. "Sometimes things work out exactly as they should, even if the path is hard." "Do you think Sergeant Webb would be proud?" Ethan asked. "I mean, the first Sergeant Webb, the one you named yourself after?" Marcus smiled. He had legally changed his last name to Webb when he married Grace, honoring both his military service and his new family. "I think he would be amazed. 3 abandoned dogs and 1 brave little boy changed the hundreds of lives. The network has placed over 300 dogs now. That's 300 heroes who might have been forgotten. 300 families made whole. 301, Grace said, joining them with Hope in her arms. "We got a call today. They found another dog, abandoned at a truck stop. German Shepherd mix, probably. Military trained based on his responses. He needs a foster home while they investigate." Ethan's eyes lit up. "Can we?" Grace and Marcus exchanged looks. Their house was already full with 3 dogs, but they also had the space, the experience, and most importantly, the heart. "He'll need a lot of work," Marcus warned. "He's been on his own for who knows how long." "That's okay," Ethan said confidently. "Bear, Luna, and Scout will teach him how to be loved again. And I'll teach him that not all people are bad." "Then I guess we're getting a fourth dog," Grace said with a laugh. As if understanding, Bear, Luna, and Scout all perked up, tails wagging. They were a pack, a family, and they had room for one more soul who needed saving. The party continued into the evening, stories shared, bonds strengthened, hope renewed. And at the center of it all were 3 German shepherds who had once shivered in the rain, abandoned and alone, now surrounded by love and purpose. As the guests began to leave, each one stopped to pet the dogs, to thank Ethan, to share how the story had inspired them. A veteran with his reunited K9 partner, a family with their adopted military dog, a child who had started volunteering at the animal shelter because of Ethan's speech. "You started something," Agent Foster told Ethan. "Something bigger than you know." "I just helped 3 dogs," Ethan said modestly. "No," she corrected. "You showed us all that compassion is courage. That's a lesson the world needs." Later, as the house grew quiet and everyone prepared for bed, Ethan made his rounds. He checked on Bear, giving the old warrior an extra blanket for his aging joints. He made sure Luna's orthopedic bed was positioned just right for her comfort. He played one last quick game with Scout, who never seemed to run out of energy. "Tomorrow, we meet the new dog," he told them. "He's going to be scared, like you were. But we'll show him he's safe now. We'll show him he's home." The dogs settled into their spots, Bear by Ethan's door, Luna in her bed, Scout at the foot of Ethan's bed. It was the same routine they'd had for years now, a comforting pattern that spoke of security and love. As Ethan drifted off to sleep, he thought about the journey that had brought them all here. A rainy day, 3 abandoned dogs, a 5-year-old boy who refused to walk away. It seemed so simple, but it had changed everything. In the darkness, Bear lifted his head, checking on his boy one more time before settling back down. Luna's gentle breathing filled the quiet room. Scout's paws twitched as he dreamed, probably chasing tennis balls in his sleep. And Ethan smiled, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dogs to save, new lives to change. But tonight, everyone was safe, everyone was loved, everyone was home. The story of the boy and the 3 German shepherds had become legend in their town, inspiration across the country, and proof around the world that one act of kindness could ripple outward in ways no one could imagine. But for Ethan, it was simpler than that. It was about family. It was about love. It was about 3 dogs who had taught him the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the smallest acts of courage create the biggest changes. Sometimes the most broken hearts love the deepest. And sometimes, when you save someone else, you end up saving yourself. As sleep finally took him, Ethan's last thought was a promise to Bear, Luna, Scout, and all the dogs still out there waiting for someone to see past their scars to their souls. He would keep fighting for them. He would keep saving them. And they would keep saving him right back. Because that's what families do. They save each other over and over again, with every act of love, every moment of loyalty. Every choice to stay when leaving would be easier, and in a world that could be cold and cruel, that was its own kind of miracle. 3 abandoned dogs and 1 brave little boy, proving that love was always stronger than fear, hope was always stronger than despair, and no one was ever too small to make a difference. The rain had brought them together, love had made them family, and nothing, not danger, not time, not anything, would tear them apart again. They were home. They were whole. They were exactly where they belonged. And that was everything. If this story touched your heart, if it made you cry, if it reminded you of the power of kindness and the importance of second chances, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories of courage, compassion, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. And please comment below. Tell us about a time when you helped an animal in need, or when an animal helped you. Tell us where you're watching from and how this story affected you. Your stories inspire us to keep sharing these messages of hope. Remember, you're never too small to make a difference, and every act of kindness matters. Together, we can create a world where no dog is abandoned, no hero is forgotten, and every creature gets the second chance they deserve. Thank you for watching, for caring, and for being part of this community of compassion. Until next time, keep choosing kindness, keep being brave, and keep believing in the power of love to change the world.